Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Runners Roundtable, where in season 4, I am talking to inspiring female runners who are changing the landscape of running in their own unique way. And I'm really excited to speak to Nikki Love today. And it's especially so because I was telling my daughters how I was talking to you this morning as I was driving them to school. They always ask me, Mommy, what do you have planned for the day? And I tell them, well, today I have a podcast interview and it's with Nikki Love, and she ran across Australia. And when I tell you that both of them screamed in the back seat with, what? How does someone do that? And how? Like, they just couldn't wrap their heads around the idea of it. And I share that story because I think people who listen to this episode are probably going to have that same reaction of what, how you did what. And of course, the immediate question is not only is it how, but how many miles is that? And I told the girls, I'm like, I'm going to confirm, but I know it's a lot of miles. And sure enough, it's 4,444 kilometers, which translates to almost 2,513 miles. So, you know, I I see that and I'm
Okay,
like,
wow.
it really is. I'm like, so you just, I mean, it's so hard to understand the scale of something like that. Even as someone who's ran marathons, my brain still can't even fathom that amount. So before we get into that and just everything else that you've been doing, can you introduce yourself to us and tell us how you even got started with running? Like, I just wanted, what was your first, did you like running when you started? I'm just like, where's the evolution of you as a runner?
Okay, so yes, there's a great big yes for do I like running? Yes, I do. I actually love it. I love the whole process. And I think I fell in love with it right from the very start. So if you take the long journey back to when I started, it was at high school. We did a cross country. We got sent out. I grew up in Australia, so we got sent out into the middle of nowhere and told to run. And I got dirty. I got sweaty. Um, I didn't know how to run. It was a long distance. It was 3 kilometers, which was like I didn't know how to run, so it was just like go as fast as you can. Oh my gosh, run again, go 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 go. Okay. And I came back and I thought, wow, what a great experience. I got to climb fences as well because that was part of the run. Um, it was just an adventure. And for me, that was just that connection of like, wow, this was outside. And everything I had done up to that point, sports wise, I did ballet, was very inside and very, uh, very like that. And
Yes.
running was like, like that. And that's what I loved about it. And I've tried to keep that enthusiasm, that adventure, that exploration in my running. And before you know it, it becomes a sort of like everything stacks up, and 1 minute you're running 3 kilometers, and next minute you're running across Australia. So that's kind of how it happened. I think there's a few steps in between, but that was it.
Yeah. So I guess how was that for you? Because I remember when I first started running, I wanted to see if I could do it. That was pretty much a lot of how I was in my early days as a runner. Was I just wanted to see what I could do. And I kind of lost that along the way because I started chasing time goals, which for some runners that is something that's highly motivating, and for some runners like myself, it wasn't. Like, it really just took away the joy from running. Or I guess it took away the joy from being curious as to what I could do. So once I started confining myself by time, I stopped thinking about, well, what else can I do? It was very much, can I do this? I guess it just closed things off. Probably like how ballet felt for you, where I'm like, oh, it's so kind of rigid. And so I started off with the what can I do? And it was that what can I do that opened me up to the possibility of running marathons. And I think back to the runner I was in 2015. And that year I ran the Miami Marathon, Lakefront 50K, Chicago Marathon, and Berlin Marathon. Like those were big events. And again, after that, I was like, I really want to get faster and fast times. So then I kind of shifted gears to running maybe one or two marathons a year. Then I shifted gears to like not running marathons at all, to where I'm back now in a space of genuine curiosity. Last year, I ran two marathons and I was so excited that I did it and that I finished wanting to do more. So, that's me. But I started off with a 5K and kind of built up. Then I've had all these waves of like, I don't want to do it. And then these waves of wanting to do it. And for me, the longest time, part of the story that I told to myself, particularly with marathoning, was it wasn't even that I didn't like it. I just felt like I was missing something, like I was missing an important piece of that. So how did you go from that 3K to, 4,044 kilometers? And was there ever any of those periods of, I don't want to say doubting yourself, but maybe just questioning the why behind the things that you were doing as a runner?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's been a long, long process for it to go from, like, I think I was 12 or 13 when I did that very first 3K, and I did love the process of it. And I went home and I asked my dad to help me run better, because I wanted to learn how to run better. I wanted to feel that sort of continuous, being able to run for 3 kilometers rather than stop, start, stop, start. So that was the curiosity right from the very start. And it really was a curiosity, and I wanted to see how much further I could go. And it was also this was a little bit of independence. So yes, my dad took me around, but then he said, "Okay, off you go. See if you can go a little bit further. Go a little bit, go further away." And to me, that was that exploration, is actually how far can I go, and how far away from home can I go, and be able to get back as well. And it just grew. And the further away I was able to run and then get myself back, the more confident I got that actually I am capable of looking after myself. And I
Mm.
was that was a really good learning curve. If I got stuck anywhere, if I was, when you're a teenager, 16, 15, 16, and still catching buses and stuff like that, as if the bus, I actually realized that I could run home. And that independence, that was a great learning tool. And I just kept it taking it forward. And I was like you, as the marathon was like, oh my gosh, do I think I could do that maybe one day? And I did the Melbourne Half Marathon, and I was in my early 20s. And I got to that finish line and I watched people keep running. I'm like, how? How do you keep going? I'm tanked. I'm out. How do they have to do that again? But it was just that thought of like, well, they can, maybe I can. And using that thought of what can I do, maybe I can. And I've just used that, and keep throwing that into the equation when I look at what other people are doing. I think, maybe I can. And I know that my things will look different to theirs. I look at it and I go, some people will go, oh, that's I'm never going to be like them, so therefore I can't do it. Whereas I
Mhm.
look and go, wow, that's amazing. I wonder what my version looks like. And yeah, that's the ability then to test it out and see. I wonder if I can give it a go. Give it a go. And have there been ups and downs? I'm going to say yes, because there always is, and you fall in and you fall out of life and love, and that reflects in running as well. So yeah, but all in all, when I set these goals or these targets, I go back to the basics: is, am I going to have a good time out on this? Am I going to find something about myself? Is it going to be an adventure? And I use the term, I know that I'm an ultra runner, I'm an endurance runner, but key is I'm an adventure runner, because I want to go out there and have an adventure. I don't do many races because they are, again, that rigid. Rigid is a great word. Whereas when I can come up with an idea and go, I make up the rules, let's go. Yeah, that puts the passion back in, and that to me is everything.
So one, I'm so years ago, we moved to Chicago for a year. And this was back in 2014, 2015. And I remember being so scared of that transition. At the time, my daughters were 2 years old and 4 years old. And we were moving away from Miami, Florida, where family, the bulk of our support system was. And I had a revelation one day, and I'm trying to think, I'm like, was this while I was running? I don't know. But I had a revelation of, if I call it an adventure, that opens me up to possibility. So from then on, anytime I'm facing like a transition or a challenge, I tell myself, we're going on an adventure. And even now, my daughters, when we're in Miami, stuck in traffic and taking like back routes where my girls are asking me, where are we going? I'm like, we're adventuring. We're adventuring. That's been my reframe. So to hear you emphasize the importance of this word adventure, and even just identifying as an adventure runner, it makes my soul happy, because so much within the running community can be very structured and very rigid, and you have to train like this, and you have to follow this rule, and you have to do it this way, and then if you don't do it this way, you're not a runner. Or there's just like all these little points of gatekeeping within running that I think are silly. I don't know who made them up, and I don't know why people abide by them. But hearing you talk about adventure, it just brought me back to myself and the life outside of the run, and how I should apply the word adventure to my own running as well, because it really does. Like when you say something's an adventure, it's almost like you're priming your mind to have fun. You're like, all right, whatever happens, it's going to be fun. Even if it's unexpected, it's going to be fun. So, how did you land on that word?
Oh, this came about many years ago. So I think my very first multi-day run was in 2010, and I was looking around to see who was doing what. I'd been inspired by two books. One was the American Dean Carnese's, his 50 Marathons in 50 Days. And then there was a British woman, Rosie Swale Pope, and she had run around the world. And I took these two things and I was like, oh, yeah, this is what I want to do. But it is such an adventure. And yeah, I was had to come up with a term, and I didn't know too many other people who were doing this. So I just sort of thought, well, adventure run. And that whole mindset of, gosh, this is hard, this is scary, it is going to ask a lot of me, but if I can come at it with the term of adventure, if I can come at it with the term of play, I'm going out to play. I'm going out to run for the day, and I love running, and to me that's playing. And so that was the ability to bring it down to a place where it didn't scare me so much that I didn't actually give it a go. I didn't start. So it's rough and there's plenty of tears and it's hard, but it's also fun, and I get to play and I get to explore an adventure. So that's how I work on it, to get my head into the right space to be able to do it. I I've just started university. So I'm age 56. I'm at university in first year with 19-year-olds, and I'm doing sports psychology. So I am coming into it the same processes that I get to come to university. I get to learn about the brain. I get to have this massive adventure, and I'm going to play and bring it back to the fun thing. And it's really hard as well. So but yeah, that's just, you said reframing is it's not acknowledging what's about to come, and that there might be difficulties there, but it's saying, okay, if there's difficulties there, how am I going to work with them, work around them, plow through them, because you will.
Yeah, that's, I call myself the queen of reframe because I always try to figure out what's the reframe in any given situation, any challenging situation of, okay, so what's the reframe and then what's the lesson, right? Like what am I here to learn? What am I here to experience? And then if I can see it as a lesson, then it's not so much, I feel like we hear it, or I've heard it often, right? Like this idea of life is happening for you, not to you, right? Like the things that you are facing, it's happening for your growth, for your mindset shifts. It's not stuff that's happening to you that are setbacks, especially when I think s- pulling it back to running, right? As distance runners, and the longer the distances get, there's an element of acceptance that has to come in with, there's going to be parts that hurt and there's going to be parts that suck, right? Like there's going to be parts that are incredibly challenging where you're going to want to quit. But what are the words you say to yourself in those moments to keep you going forward? And I think that's where all the reframes come in, right? That I didn't get this far to only come this far. Or for
Yeah.
me, the big one is always reminding myself that I don't have to do this. And I think back to it's a story I've shared before, and I feel like you had a similar experience based off of an interview I heard you in, where it was a Chicago marathon for me. I was having a really, really tough time. I cried in a porta potty. Like that's how hard the day was for me. And I texted my husband to tell him that I was struggling, and his response was, "Ha, you paid to do this." And I was like, "Well, there you go." I'm never I'm never going to complain to him about anything again because it's true. I paid to do it, which means I made the choice to do this thing. Now, I feel
Mm.
like we go into these things hoping for the best, right? We go into them hoping that our body's going to cooperate, the mind is going to be okay, that everything, the weather, like we're hoping for everything, but that's not reality. So I find reframes so incredibly powerful. And I'm curious, when you were doing this adventure of traveling across Australia, what were some of the reframes that came up for you?
Oh, so early on, so self-talk is so important, because you're going to be on your own for a very long time if you're doing a marathon, or you're running at my pace because I'm slow. Um, and I understand how important the self-talk is, and I did hear myself saying, "I'm too old for this." Like, uh, but I also, that was talking away. I was saying those words, and then I was thinking, but I'm here. I'm doing it. I'm okay. All right. Well, maybe I'm not too old for this. So that continued until I got into a flow. At which point I was like, actually, you know what? I am not. This is what I wanted to do. This was my choice, and yeah, at no point had I did I think I was going to stop, or did I want to stop? I had some pretty tough moments, and there was a lot of tears, and I was thinking, I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep going, but have a cry, let it out, and then go, okay, up you get, give it a go again. So there was a lot of reframes. I'm also I'm 56. I don't think I've ever been a morning person. At high school, at school, I was always late because I'm not a morning person. And every morning I got to watch the sunrise because I was up and running before the sun came up. And oh my gosh, that was the most magical experience, especially out in the middle of nowhere, Australia, where you could see this sliver of red, and then the day would start to lighten, the sky would start to fade, the stars would fade, and that experience was, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So I'm still not a morning person, and I still struggle, but the experience was incredible. So I can be a morning person if I need to be. um,
Yeah. So to put it out there, right? So this is something you did in 2023. We're
yes.
not that far removed from it. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions about this. How did you, first of all, how did you decide this was something you wanted to do?
Okay, so this was going back again to 2010, and the lead up to 2010, I ran 7 marathons in 7 days. And in the lead up, I'd sort of gone, what can I do? How can I do something bigger? Give me some passion, give me some purpose. And I'd wanted to run 30 marathons in 30 days. I got talked out of that to bring it back down to something that everybody could quite understand. It was 7 marathons in 7 days. But whilst I was doing that, I was journaling, and I was like, what else would I want to do? And I had a great big long list of things I'd love to do. And I was always told, you're a big dreamer. And I was like, yeah, I'm a big dreamer, but you've got to have these dreams to actually look to doing them. And I was always told off for having this big long to-do list. So just on that, I now have a to-da list. So it's ta-da, I've done it. So I've got a to-do and a ta-da. And the things that are moving over from the to-do to the ta-da is once you actually say you're going to do it, you then got a process. But I had a long list of things that I wanted to do. And the Australia came a few years later. I watched a bloke run across Australia, and I thought, well, I grew up in Australia. I'd love to run across Australia. I wonder if I can. I'm not sure, but I'll put it on my list. And from that point, my dad always says, if you think it, then it must be a possibility. So it sat there for a while. I went and did some other things to prove to myself. There was a little bit of proving to other people as well, but it was mainly to prove to myself that actually, maybe this is something I can do. And eventually sort of came around that it was time to drag this one out of the to-do list, put it on the adventure list, and actually work towards it. It took 10 years from the thought to the fruition, and that either means that I'm crazy determined, or um, or a crazy belief. I'm not sure, but it was once I decided that it was going to happen, all the obstacles, and there were lots of obstacles that came in the way. I found ways to overcome them. So that includes having a broken pelvis 2 years ago. That made me more determined. The finances, that was, it was a big adventure. The finances, that was another obstacle I had to overcome. And all of those things if there was a door or a wall, it was just make me more determined that actually I'm going to find the way to, I don't know, kick it down, jump over it, do something to, and thankfully, I know I'm very lucky. I've managed to find the solutions and actually go for it and achieve it.
Well, it's almost like where the desire is, everything else kind of flows through it, right? Like this idea of, if you have a goal that you're very determined to reach, you start making smaller decisions in other places that you don't even realize you're making, that are going to help clear the path for that goal. And it sounds like that's kind of what happens for you. So that you have it on your to-do list, and then it shifts over to this adventure list. How was the preparation for it? I mean, what are some of the logistical things that we may not even know a person would have to figure out in order to do this adventure?
Okay, so the basics were I had to get to Australia because I live in I live in the UK. So even though I grew up in Australia, I had to get to Australia. Yeah, my flight originally was booked in 2020, and I had to cancel that flight because it didn't happen. There was the COVID interruption or block. Then it was rebooking flights and getting there, getting to Australia and breaking my pelvis, and having to work out what went wrong, how could I fix it, can I do this thing that I want to do, love to do, can I keep doing this long distance running? And that took a long time to work out. So there was the rebuilding of my body from, not from scratch, because it was never from scratch. There's a lot of endurance poured into this body, but I had to take into consideration where I was, and being perimenopausal. I thought that I was coping with it, but internally body wasn't, so had to redress that. And yeah, so there was that side of it, was making sure I believed that I was strong enough to be able to cope with that sort of distance. And yeah, that was 2 years of hard work. But even then, things happen, and I got injured again just before I left to go to Australia. I slipped on some black ice and hurt my pelvis again, and it was just like, have I damaged it to that extent that I won't be able to run? I don't know. I'll go and I will just see, because if I'm there, I've got a better chance of starting than if I doubt and stay in the UK. So there was the logistics of how were we going to get across Australia. We had, big visions of like, we'll have an RV van. And we'll have a couple of people who can help, and I'll have sports massage. Well, that didn't happen because finances. We were looking at one point that me and my partner, he would ride a push bike and pull a trolley sort of thing with our gear. Which is like, okay, we managed to raise a little bit more money than that, so we've got a small van. A small van will work. It was cramped, it was yeah, it wasn't the best, but it served a purpose. And was I able to stretch in the van? No. So I had all these things that are, all right, I'm going to have to just overcome these as I move along. There was no toilet, so whether this is not a glamorous sport. You have to be very comfortable about going to the toilet whenever you need, and cope with that. And I know that it's a weird topic, but it's something that has to be discussed. The being in the middle of nowhere, we had to plan how much water we were going to carry, because we actually went through a it was 800 miles of a drought area. So there was no water available to pick up. We had to make sure that the van was full of water before we'd sort of taken off to go through this section. We had to have food because there was no places where you could, no supermarkets. It was just what's the roadhouses every 200 kilometers. So there was days when if I was running 55 kilometers a day, so there were several days where we were out in the middle of nowhere until we got to a roadhouse that had petrol, gas services. So that was all had to be planned for. That all had to be, we had to make sure that the van was fully stocked and take these things into consideration. There was no doctors, no chemists. I had to pre-think of all the things that I would personally need, with my perimenopause medication and all that sort of stuff that I'm personally taking. So yeah, it was. I had to plan for a great big long adventure, and it was fun, and things didn't go perfectly, and that's part of it. Is that I knew that this was going to happen. I'd done these sort of longer adventures before, and for having the most perfect plan, nothing ever goes to plan. So you have to be adaptable. You have to be keep your eye on the prize over here, but be willing to maybe do that to get to it.
Yeah, that sounds intense. And I was wondering, broken pelvis, was it related to running at all? Or is that
Uh,
where did that come from?
it was perimenopausal symptoms. So my body wasn't absorbing the calcium. I had low vitamin C. Low vitamin D, low calcium, low iron, and it wasn't that my diet wasn't healthy or being able to provide all of that. I Because of the fluctuations in the hormones,
Mhm.
my stomach wasn't absorbing things. I was experiencing a lot of diarrhea, and I thought that was running related. It wasn't. It was hormonal level related. So we had to go back to scratch, put everything back to a suitable level so that actually everything started working properly again. Thankfully, I hadn't done long-term damage, and it was stuff that I could actually fix and build and get strong again. So it was quite a long process of working out medications that suited me, and bring all my markers, my blood markers, back to something that was suitable for the amount of exercise I was doing. So I would argue, yes, there was probably the fact that I do these long distances has to have an impact, but ultimately it's how your body's responding to it, and if you're putting in the right stuff and the body is absorbing the right stuff, so all the processes are working, then you should be able to sort of continue doing this, because it wasn't that I was doing something different, or I'd thrown in along the distance, because I'd always done this. It was just the way it was.
Yeah, and I think that's where, thank you for answering, because I feel like that's where we not only do we do a disservice to women who run, because I feel like I'll hear things like, "Oh, I can't run because I'm 52." And I'm like, "What do you mean? I don't understand. Like, what does that have to do? What happens to women in their 50s that all of a sudden they can't run?" I'm not understanding, like that's, but that my confusion comes from being someone who's ran. I turned 40 this year, so I don't know what it's like to be in my 50s, but I do know what it's like to have a body that is changing because my hormones are changing. And I didn't even know what perimenopause was until a couple of years ago, and that perimenopause can be anywhere 10 to 15 years before you hit
Mm,
menopause. And that was
yeah.
something that I just felt like it such a disservice to women in general, in terms of there not being enough information or enough research or enough women who are speaking up about their
Mm.
experiences to shine a light on the path that the rest of us will walk, right? Because any other woman could have said, "Oh, my pelvis is broken, perimenopause is kicking my butt, and I'm done." But you said, "No, no, no, let's kind of figure this out because I know that I'm not doing anything, I'm not physically doing anything different. It's that my hormones are changing, and all of a sudden, my body is just not responding to the
Yes.
stressors of training anymore." So, going through that, what words of encouragement would you have for us women?
Okay, so things change. So accept that things are changing, um, and look for people who are coping. And if they're not coping, look at how they're dealing with the not coping. So I, I, what I'm hoping that I do is that I show that you don't have to give up on these things. And I was given some advice is like, maybe you should cut back on this stuff. And now, if I cut back on it when I started to get this perimenopausal phase, then I wouldn't have done all the things that I've done, because I have done everything since I've been in this phase. But I've had to learn and understand my body. So I'm not an expert, I'm an expert of me. And that's what you have to be. You have to be the expert on yourself, and you have to ask questions, and you have to not accept a bog standard answer. Is like, this is how we treat people, and this is the medication we're going to give you. No, I needed to know what was going to work for me, and it wasn't straightforward. And yeah, that's is learn to be your expert. Yes, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
expert
And to
you.
be your biggest advocate, because I know I've had in recent years, whenever I go to my physical, like my physical appointment with my doctor, my annual appointment with my doctor, I'll ask questions. And I feel that sometimes my questions are dismissed because, oh, you're too young. You don't have to worry about that. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like running has helped me be very in tune with my body. And
Yeah.
that's something that I try to explain when I go to the doctor, where I'm like, I'm a runner, I'm not just telling you that because I do it, but I'm a runner because I do have a different understanding of what it feels like to be in my body, not only on a day-to-day basis, but what it feels like to be in my body when I'm doing something difficult. And if I'm telling you something feels off, it's because something really does feel off. And I find that just advocating for yourself can be really, really challenging. And
Yeah.
how did you get to that point where you were like, no, 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 let's kind of push back and talk to me? Was it just repeating, talk to me about
Yeah.
me, or what was that like?
It really was. I guess fortunate, unfortunate. I'm not sure what you're gonna how you rate it, but it wasn't until I broke that, because I kept going to the doctor and saying, something's this isn't working. I'm not feeling right. I recorded um, my cycle. I kept records for months. I took photos of my bed where there was just this outline of me because I was sweating so much, and that was every night. And I kept saying, this is just, it's not, whatever it is it's not working properly. Something's changed. And it wasn't until, unfortunately, I broke, that they said, yeah, maybe we should look at this. Yes. um yeah, that's, if I could change how I dealt with myself, is that I would have got blood markers earlier on, so that I was watching it rather than just sort of like thinking, think things are changing. and I probably possibly could have caught it earlier. But yeah, that's a lesson learnt. And but
And also just even going back to this theme of reframing, right? Like here, the reframe is that now you have the capacity to educate others and to
yes,
help others know how to advocate for themselves. Even that one action step of, hey, make sure you get your blood work done and then you keep track of it. Like, don't rely on the doctors to keep track of it. And I mean, I had a very, very similar experience. It had to do with my iron levels. And for just years now, my iron levels have been considered low normal, and I would always tell the doctor, but I'm a runner. Like, iron is kind of really, really important. And maybe a low normal is okay for someone who's not as active as I am, but low normal for someone who's as active as I am, that's not normal. And every year I would get dismissed and they would tell me, it's okay, just take an iron supplement. It's going to be okay. And I'm like, but I am taking the iron supplement. I don't understand what else you want me to do. And last year I saw a new doctor and the doctor's like, no, it's okay. It's low normal. And I'm like, I think if we're seeing a pattern of low normal across a couple of years, like maybe we should start thinking about what else can we change. So instead of it being low normal, it's normal. Like, how do we get that to normal? And the doctor was a little bit dismissive of it. And sure enough, the blood work came back once again as low normal. But even then, it was still the recommendation was take an iron supplement. And I'm like, first of all, I feel
yeah,
incredibly dismissed because I've been telling you and every doctor I go to that, hey, this is what's going on with me. And instead of them seeing me for me, it's like, well, it's a low normal, it's still within normal range. And it's like, I think it's very challenging to advocate for yourself, but there is strength when you hear how others have done it, and
mm,
encouragement too of knowing that sometimes you do have to scream to be heard. And
yeah,
sometimes your body's the one that's going to do that screaming too.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
how did you, I guess, can you walk us through what a average day was like on this Australia adventure? So we know you woke
Okay.
up early and you caught the sunrise.
Yeah.
How did the rest of the day unfold for you?
Right. So it really was just slog it out. So waking up, it was my routine was coffee and a peanut butter sandwich, because that worked for me. Then in the van, it was put all my clothes on, so that I don't have to think about it and go, okay, what's the weather like outside? I'll see when I get out there. And once I'd had my coffee and my peanut butter sandwich, it was okay. Get up and get ready to move. Um, every morning was, oh gosh, I'm stiff. Oh my gosh, I'm sore. Just start running. It's okay. And you do get into a flow, and there is an adaptation phase where everything hurts, and then it gets worse, and everything kills, and then it gets better. But you just have to hang in there. So it sounds weird, but I say that my body has this warm up process, and it takes me about 500 kilometers to warm up until I can get into a routine where it's just like, oh, this is normal. um, I wish it wasn't like that, but it is. Um, and then it was run throughout the day, and I had little processes. So the getting up before the sunrise and seeing the sunrise. So that was a like, oh my gosh, another day, fantastic. Um, and then I had most days was between 20 and 30 kilometers were my hardest parts of the day. I'd lose concentration. I'd be wondering why I'm there and all that sort of stuff. So it was just hold on, think positive thoughts. I did a lot of reflecting back to how I got here. And I do that pretty much during the 20 to 30 kilometers, thinking, trying to tell myself how strong I was, and that I could get through this, because I did it yesterday and I did it the day before. I'm going to be able to do it today, even though today is tough. Okay. And I had a little treat. If I could get to 40 kilometers, then I was allowed to put music on. And I carried my, I had a band around my waist. And I had my phone in there, and I would turn the music on, but not use headphones or anything like that. So the music would just be around me, because I needed to listen to traffic. I needed to be fully aware of what was going on. But yeah, if I got to 40 kilometers, I was allowed to listen to music, and then I would start the music going. And if I was struggling on a day, and I was getting, sometimes I would struggle at that 20k mark. I had a process where you're allowed to listen to one song per kilometer. So the song plays, you listen to it, you run, then you have to turn the music off, and you have to get to the end of that kilometer before you're allowed to listen to another piece of music. So that was a little sort of incentive on those really tough days. The 40 kilometers, from 40 to 50, that was just like, oh, I'm in a groove here. I'm playing music, I'm enjoying myself. And then once I got to 50, it was just like, okay, I've set my target for 55 kilometers. So I'm going to run to 55 kilometers. And then depending on the day, how the day was going, my partner would sort of like be at the 55 kilometer mark, and we say, are you okay? Keep going. And so we tried to push it a little bit further. So he would just sort of like park up a little bit further, say, go on, come on, come on. So I had to take every day one day at a time, and I had these little tricks, and they all seemed to work. So yeah, it was fun, but also hard. I can look back now and go, yeah, that was fun. I really enjoyed that, and I really do enjoy being in the thick of that sort of pushing. At the time, I probably didn't say it was a whole lot of fun, but yeah. And when we got to the end of the day, it was, we were either had run to a place where we were parking up for the night, or we had to go and find somewhere to park up for the night it wasn't just the edge of the road. And that was a routine that we it
Yeah,
becomes
my
very.
brain is trying to do the math, and I'm like, oh, that is just, how many of those 50-kilometer plus days did you have?
76 days. 3 hours and 43 minutes was the official finish time.
So that's just a lot of time on your feet. And it seems
It is
like,
a lot of time.
it seems like you gave yourself a lot of flexibility within that as well, of just even hearing you say of, that day, it was just, the goal was to get to 40 kilometers. And then if you get to 40 kilometers, then you can push a little bit more. And then you can push a little bit more and a little bit more. And what's the biggest lesson you learned about yourself?
Ooh, so when I finished, I got to the end, and I was just like, I didn't learn anything. That was, all I learned was that Australia's really big. So, and that I'm a glutton for punishment. So that's what my mum would say, a glutton for punishment. It's like, you can endure everything, and where's the lesson in that? But actually there were lots of lessons, and I was scared. I will I admitted it during the event. I will continue to say it now, is that I was scared. There was a long list of things that I was scared about. I was scared about the traffic. I was scared about the wildlife. I was scared if my body was going to cope with all of that things. I did it anyway. I was scared, and I got up and I did it anyway. So if I can do that here, I can take that over here to what I'm doing here. So going to university, I'm scared, but I'm going to do it because I can do it anyway. It's not trying to subdue this, but just say, okay, come along for the ride. Come on, scared, let's go. And yeah, that was a really good lesson.
My brain is reeling right now because I had a similar conversation with, uh, I can't remember. I can't remember if it was someone on a podcast or if it was someone outside of podcasting world, but I had that conversation either yesterday or the day before. We'll see when these podcasts come out if we revisit it. But I just told this person, or was it in therapy? Now I don't know. But anyways, it doesn't matter where I said it. I'm my brain right now, like as you were speaking, the little hamster in my brain was like trying to figure out where I said what I said because I earlier this week told someone that a lot of the goals that I had, I thought I thought I couldn't do them because I was scared. And how extraordinary it is to think about how our fears can hold us back from our own greatness. And that's what it was. I was talking specifically about the marathon and how I thought I could never do a marathon. And I would always joke, I don't like to drive 26.2 miles. Why would I do a marathon? Like, I don't understand that. And years later, like this week later, I realized that the reason I thought that was because I was scared. I was scared of the distance. I was scared of, quote unquote failure. I was so scared. And then I did it, and it wasn't anything to be scary about. Like, I made it. I made it. But hearing what you're saying, it's like I feel like I'm in a deja vu situation right now because I remember telling this person, imagine what we could experience if we weren't always so scared.
Mhm.
And you're absolutely right. I mean, if you can, listen, if you can run through the Australian wilderness and like where you have to make sure you have to ration out your own water and make sure you have enough, you can totally go into that university class for 1 hour and like sit and listen to, right, like like you can. And I find that running has it's that's one of the reasons why I love running so much, because there are lessons I learn about myself as a runner that apply to everything else. If I can endure this hard thing when I run, then I can definitely show up for this hard thing outside of the run, which I think is
Yeah.
great. But it brings me to this question. So you finish and you're like, I didn't learn anything. Did you experience any post tada blues? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And when I did the first one, I experienced that, and I thought, oh, this was that wasn't the nicest part of the the experience. And knowing that there is this come down, and it's a come down from running. But if you do anything that you set your goal, and takes a big time, you've done a lot of planning, if it's just like a holiday, you come back and it's gone, and there is this downtime, so factor it in. So I've learned to factor it in, and there was a downtime, and it was multiplied, because not only was I finished this goal that had taken 10 years from thought to fruition, I then had to say goodbye to my parents because I was leaving Australia, and my family are all in Australia, and I was going back to the UK. So I had that as well. I'd spent 6 months in Australia prepping, then doing, and then a little recovery afterwards. And I was leaving this, I'd poured my heart not only into my family, but onto the road of Australia. I had to leave that. So I always knew that this was coming. And then there was the down from the physicality of it, which was there is a dip. There has to be a dip, and the intensity of the concentration of focusing to make sure that I didn't get in the way of cars. I wasn't sort of relying on them out of my way. I was staying out of their way. and the intensity of that level of uh, focus or fear. So the cortisol levels were really high, and coming down off of that, it was or I'm a bit foggy. I couldn't even, I did experience that brain fog at the end. So I knew it was all coming. My way of dealing with that is to acknowledge it. It's going to happen. What have I got to look forward to? And I knew that I was going to be starting university a month after I got back to the UK, so I had that to look forward to. I have put my list of to do there, so I've got my next challenge that I want to do. I know I had to come down, but I also sort of think that was a big thing, but it wasn't the end. And if you accept that things are just that there's more to it afterwards, so don't just sort of go, oh well, that was it, nothing will ever be the same as that again. Actually, you know what, I already had something planned over here. I'm going to look at that without focusing on that, because I want to appreciate this, but I've also got something to look forward to over here. And yeah, you just accept that you're going to have this downtime, work with it, and know that you're going to come out of it. So it is part of the process.
And I think
I wish it wasn't, maybe.
but no, but I'm so glad you articulated all of that, because I think even as just as runners, right? We oftentimes have a big race as the goal, and we fail to factor in that you need to take some time after recovery, that is also part of the training for that race. It's not you do the race and then you're done. No, no, no. There's actually, depending on the distance, we want like 1 to 2 weeks afterwards to kind of recover from that. But what I really, really, really liked about what you just shared is the fact that that thing you were looking forward to, or one of the things you were looking forward to, was something that was not running related. And it's not to say that going back to school isn't running related. Sports psychology is running related. But I find that you had something to come back to that reminded you that you're more than a runner.
Mhm.
And I just love that, because I feel like oftentimes, again, as runners, we're thinking about, okay, we finish one event and then what's the next big event that we're going to do? When it's like, okay, but wait, how about, I know for myself, especially for myself, that usually when I'm like that, I don't even have time, I don't give myself the time to truly celebrate the accomplishment, because my brain is already like, okay, next thing. But I really, really appreciate, again, I know you have other running goals, but I just really appreciated how you mentioned, oh, I knew I was going to start school a month after doing this, because again, it's that helping us shift our understanding of, yes, you spend a lot of time on this very specific goal that speaks to your runner identity, but you're so much more. You're Nikki before you're Nikki the runner, right? Like you
Yeah.
are you before you are that. And I just hope that people hear that and maybe they start to shift for themselves. What can I look forward to after my goal that maybe isn't running related, but it does feed your soul? It still feeds your soul. Again, you're doing sports psychology, so it's just another aspect of the athlete in you. And I just, yeah, I really appreciate that, because I feel like we don't talk about that often enough, about that come down post a big goal, and what it's like to re-enter a life that no longer has that goal as the North Star.
Mm, mm, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I have a few more questions for you.
Okay.
We're going to kind of go rapid fire here. Okay. So, what would you say to someone who is interested in running, but doesn't know how to start, and maybe doesn't know if they should start?
Oh, okay. Um, Everybody can do it. So, and you don't have to fit a mold. You don't have to have certain trainers or a look. So if it tickles your fancy, just give it a go and know that every single person who's ever tried has found that there is a hard point, there's a sticking point. So you run and you go, oh, I'm done now. And that might be, I don't know, a kilometre, it might be less, it might be 500 metres, it might be a little bit further, but everybody will find that first bit and they'll go, okay, I've given it a go. It was fun, and then it was hard, and I found my limit. And if you can enjoy that process and not think that people are watching you, and people are going to make a judgment of you, and that you just did this because I felt like giving it a go, then you'll be able to sort of build on it. I cannot describe enough how beautiful I think running is, how fun I think running is. If I can go out and listen to the birds, or go out and see a track and go, I'll try and see where that goes. That exploration of it, and not necessarily the, oh, I've got to get to the end of that street. So take that, is that you're not trying to impress anybody, you're not trying to achieve something that you know you're going to have to tell everybody about and people might judge you. Is just go for a run and say, that was fun.
I'm going to go back to something you shared earlier of, if the idea is there, then maybe it's something worth pursuing. What would you say the answer, or I guess the question is, how can I trust myself to pursue my curiosities?
Mm. So I do this a lot, which is I say to myself, back myself. And that's easier said than done, because when you say it, it's like, yeah, back yourself. Okay, yeah, back yourself. Oh, now you expect, I actually have to go do that. Like, okay, what does it actually mean? Oh, I actually have to go and give it a go. If you give something a go, you've tried. It's if you have it in here and you never, ever give it a go, then how will you know? How will you know that it's right or wrong for you if you haven't actually tried it? So it that simple thing of back yourself, and you don't have to just, you know, tell the world that this is what you're going to do. Put any expectations. It's just give it a go. And yeah.
It's like, follow your passions and don't worry what anyone else has to say about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say is something that us women completely miss when it comes to perimenopause?
When things are starting to change, you just accept that you're getting older. Um, and, you know, there's no doubting you're getting older. Um, a little bit beyond what you can cope with. Actually, go and look and do something about it. Um, that whole brain fog thing is real. And it's not you're going mad, and it's not that you're going crazy. And if you, so I did the whole realm of every, so I think they list, I don't know, 42 symptoms. I think I can tick most of them. And I didn't understand. I just thought it was hot flashes. Oh,
Mm.
and that was it. No, there's a great big long list of things. And if you start being able to tick, like have a bingo card of the list, and you're starting to tick a lot of them, and go and ask for some advice, because you don't have to get to an extreme stage before you can look at doing something about it. Um, and that's where the choices come in. Once you start realizing that there's actually something you can do, you can go down medication, you can go down another route, but don't just accept this as um, you're getting older and this is what happens when you get older. Um, there's a little bit more to it that you can control.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing the whole there's a list of things because that's I thought well, again, I didn't even know there was perimenopause. I thought it was just menopause. And similarly, I thought it was just hot flashes. Oh, I thought, oh, hot flashes and you gain weight. And then
Mm,
I saw what the list was and I'm like, well, no wonder us women have no clue what's going on because a lot of those things we can just attribute to having stressful lives, right? Like
yeah.
there's a lot on there. And then I took a course, it was with Dr. Stacy Sims, Menopause for
Mm,
Athletes. And one thing that she drilled home in there was if it starts to be so frequent that it interferes with quality of life,
mm,
you need to question it. And it was just for
mm,
me, it was like, oh, you're right. Like, so why do we accept that aging as a woman has to be this horrible thing where we're uncomfortable and all of this when it's like, no, it actually doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to feel like we're going insane or that we're so disconnected from our bodies we really have no clue what's going on when it's like no, that doesn't have to be the experience at all. But again, I find that a lot of that comes from like conversations like this from people
mm,
like you who are talking about it and it's like just even hearing you say it doesn't have to be that way where I'm like
mm,
oh it doesn't, okay then so why, to me, it's just, again, I think we do such a huge disservice for women. And
mm.
there's so much that, and it's part of society, I guess, where so much is focused on, young girls and pregnancy and all of that. And then there's this perimenopause and menopause where it's kind of discarded there, where it's like, okay, well, I guess you're no longer young and fertile, and we're gonna just let y'all figure it out on your own. So I find that it's so important to know. I think it's I guess my from what I understand and kind of what I'm hearing from you is that if something feels really, really different, then that's your first indication that you should start questioning what's happening.
Yeah, yeah. And then if I could just share this little part, which is that I know that I'm perimenopausal. I know that I've got, if I can tick many of the things off this list, I know that it has impacted me, but I don't use it as an excuse to say well, I can't do this now because of this. I've actually I've wanted to find ways that allows me to do the things that I still want to do, uh, possibly against some advice, some GP advice, but I've listened to myself and I've wanted to do this. I don't want it to be an excuse. It's sometimes an explanation, but it's not the this has stopped me. It's just giving me a hard time until
Yeah.
I found a way to cope with it.
Well, and I think that also just to emphasize what you've said multiple times, where it's like you are the expert on you. And
Yeah.
as the expert on you, you have the opportunity to explore because you're an adventurer, right?
Mhm.
Explore what you need to do in order to do the things you want to do. And I think
Yeah.
that's beautiful. All right, I have three final questions for you. So,
Okay.
question number one is just tell us where we can follow you, where we can get more information about you. Just how can we connect with you further beyond this episode?
Okay, so Instagram is probably the best place, and it's Nikki Love Runs. I've got a website, it's nikkilove.co.uk, and we are now working on putting YouTube stuff together, because we have got hours upon hours upon hours of footage, and we did film everything to try and show the beauty of the places that I've been to, the opportunities that I've had to run, and I do think they are opportunities. So I really want to share that. So we are putting stuff together, and so I'll be on YouTube as well.
Which leads me to, what do you have coming up beyond these YouTube videos that we can celebrate you in?
Okay, so the on my to-do list was to run across America. I'm not sure how that's going to look at the moment. I've had a couple of versions of that. It's going to be next year, 2025. So this year I'm going to do a little UK adventure, which is quite well known. It's top to bottom of the UK. So a place called John O'Groats to Land's End. So you use the JOG for John O'Groats and Land's End. So it's called the Joggle. And to do that, I'm also going to throw in, there's another challenge called the Three Peaks Challenge. So there's the three peaks in Scotland, England and Wales. So the route kind of skirts through them. So I'm throwing in the Three Peaks as well. So it's the Joggle Three Peaks Challenge. So I believe I'm the first woman to do this. So looking forward to that during the summer, during my summer holidays, because I'm a student now, so I get summer holidays.
I love that, during my summer holiday, because I'm a student now. I love that. Okay, final question is, what are your final words for us?
Oh, most definitely back yourself. Trust yourself and back yourself, because you are capable of so much. Go and find out what you are capable of achieving. It's fun. It's exciting. It's an adventure.
It is an adventure, and my hope for everyone who's listened to this episode is that they seek their next adventure, and that they take you as someone who is showing that it can be done while having fun, because it is play. So,
Mm.
Nikki, thank you so, so much for chatting with me, for giving me all this incredible time to pick your brain on running distances that I cannot fathom, but that I look at and I hear and I see, and I am just utterly mesmerized by what the human spirit, not just the body, but what the human spirit can do. So I hope you come to America, and I hope you make your way through Florida, and I can, just maybe share a couple of miles with you on that. So, Nikki, thank you so, 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 so much.
Thank
Everyone,
you.
we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks.